Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for the invitation. That's a great initiative, great program, great speakers, very interesting presentations. So on to mine now. It's based on the review that's now accepted in sports medicine, as Henning already told you, along with Henning Wackerhage, Steven Seller, and Hermann Heck. A great collaboration, very thought-provoking. I'm thanking for it. And so, if someone searches about vLamax on the internet, he will get a lot of results. I don't know how many of those are science-backed, but a more careful observer will see that cyclists, for some reason, are more interested in vLamax. And we know the reason why German-speaking people have more to say about vLamax. It's about its origin. So I will be talking about vLamax blood, as already Henning made the distinction about vLamax muscle and vLamax blood. It's the maximal rate of lactate accumulation in blood during exercise, and it's our measure of glycolytic power. For years we have VO2 max for measuring aerobic power. Now vLamax blood is our choice for measuring glycolytic power. We systematically search PubMed to find data about vLamax blood testing. And we saw that there is a variety of disciplines included in such research, mostly studies of cycling, but also of running, head cycling, swimming, rowing, double poling, and isokinetic tests. Most of these tests were done in the lab, but some of those in the field, and more specifically the sports ground or the swimming pool. And as I'm involved in swimming, I will share some data on swimming later. The test was always maximal, almost always, and the test duration of these tests were about 10 to 15 seconds. We've done some research with durations longer than that, and we found that they're less suitable for vLamax blood estimation, probably because the aerobic contribution increases in durations above the 10 to 15 seconds. So we'll stick to this duration. And you have already heard about the equation for calculation of vLamax blood. So I'm going to head over to lactic time, because as you can see, the lactic time is usually 3 to 3.5 seconds for tests about 10 to 15 seconds, according to the literature, or it's equivalent to the time until the 3.5% bar decrease. Studies that have used the later lactic time have found that the lactic time was about 1.5 seconds. So we see that there is a difference between the 3.5 seconds that is usually suggested. So that's a hint that the lactic time is causing us some trouble. The range of vLamax blood values that we found in literature are about 0.2 to 1 millimole per liter per second. That range allows us to make some conclusions that we'll talk about later, but we can expect differences in the values of vLamax blood that we can take, probably due to different disciplines, different duration of tests, and different calculation method. To give you an example, I have some data from Oliver Quitman's group. In the first case, they compared cycling and running, and they found that in running they obtained a higher vLamax blood values than in cycling. And in the second occasion, they compared cycling and hand cycling, with cycling providing larger vLamax blood values. The common ground in both cases is that the disciplines that provided larger vLamax blood results were the disciplines that used more muscle mass, so we can have a clear clue about what's happening. The next thing is that the next example is about the possible effect of duration to the vLamax blood value. And after James Langley's great presentation, I have some data of his work from last year. They compared three different durations, 10, 15, and 30 seconds, and they found that as the duration increased, the vLamax blood value decreased. So I can also confirm that we have the same picture from swimming. We compared three distances in 2023 by Mavridi et al. The research I'm going to show you later. And we found the same thing, that as the distance increased, the vLamax value decreased. So we have to stick to durations of about 10 to 15 seconds. There are also some other factors that can affect the vLamax results. And what we saw in practice was also confirmed by research by Paul et al. That when he had increased resting lactate concentration, the lactate concentration that we measured before the maximal test, we tend to underestimate the vLamax blood. Also, when we have athletes who have followed the restricted nutrition, maybe on a diet, and they had restricted carbohydrate intake, also we tend then to underestimate their vLamax blood. So the suggestion is to start the test with resting lactate concentration below 2, even better below 1.5 millimole per liter, and to suggest the athletes to follow an adequate in carbohydrates nutrition before the test. Some data from Paul et al. You can see here that in the first case, when the lactate was low, 1.37, the vLamax blood was 0.59, and when they had a high resting lactate concentration of 3.37, they had a lower vLamax blood of 0.51. Maybe it seems a small difference, but it's meaningful, and we have to take care of it. Jamie before me spoke about the reliability of vLamax blood tests, and as we searched the same thing in PubMed, we found that the vLamax blood tests are reliable, and that high reliability allows us for further implementation of this test. Jamie explained the issues that arise, and we'll talk about this more, but the high interclass correlation coefficient of in all these studies allows us to further use vLamax blood testing and to get more insights of the marker and the metabolic profile of the athletes tested. However, we should always, as in every test, control the settings so we can have reliable and comparable results. I told you before that the range of the vLamax blood values allows us to draw some conclusions about the athletes that are being tested. So what's relatively well known now is that the vLamax blood can give us a clue about the specialization of the athletes, because short distance athletes have a tendency to have high vLamax blood, while long distance specialists have a tendency to have a low vLamax blood. One can see the things the other way around and say that you need a high vLamax blood to be a specialist in sprinting events, and a low vLamax blood to be specialist in endurance events, and that gives us a hint about our training. More vLamax blood has been found to be related with sprint performance, and that's also really important, because that way we can evaluate sprint performance, predict sprint performance, and try to improve sprint performance by increasing vLamax blood. But it's not only sprint performance that has been correlated with vLamax blood. In another study, they found that vLamax blood correlated well with the finishing kick in an endurance event. It was a 5K running, and they found that in the athletes that were faster in the last 200 meters had a higher vLamax blood, and that's really important because you can win or lose the race in the last meters. Also, vLamax blood has been correlated with the anaerobic speed reserve, and that's another way of seeing things, that biochemical markers like vLamax blood and competition markers or performance metrics like the anaerobic speed reserve may correlate and give us a better idea of the metabolic and competitive profile of each athlete. A couple of examples here. One, the one that Quitman et al. Found the correlation between vLamax blood and the finishing kick in a 5K running event, providing an R squared of 15%. That's remarkable. And the other one is the high correlation of vLamax with maximal sprinting speed and anaerobic speed reserve by Thor et al. A careful observer will see that the vLamax blood is different stated here. It's a Scylla max, and it's one thing that we can start to, discussing about to merging nomenclature and have a common one in the future. and today is a great opportunity to do so. So, what's the effect of training, of different training methods on vLamax blood? Surprisingly, this topic is understudied, although you can find a lot of information on the internet about how to decrease or increase vLamax blood. There are not so many studies around. What is believed is that endurance training of moderate to heavy intensity tends to lower vLamax blood, while sprint interval training or maximal intensity training tends to increase vLamax blood. Unfortunately, we don't have so many research data on that. Jamie already stated that, and a couple of studies that we found is that there was no difference between 6 weeks of sprint interval training and endurance training, although there were some fluctuations during this time interval. And also Nietzsche et al., and I think he has more to say later, found an increase in vLamax blood after resistance training, but no difference between 6 weeks of high volume low load and low volume high load resistance training. So there is great room and a great opportunity for research on the effects of different training methods on vLamax blood. Apart from what I've already told you, are there any other issues with vLamax blood? Yes, there are, and Henning very nicely presented them earlier, so I'm going to be even faster here to say that glycolysis is unlikely to be truly fully activated during all-out exercise. Lactate synthesis reaches its in vivo peak during all-out exercise only for a fraction of a second. So we measure 10 to 15 seconds, and that's really problematic. And there is currently no criterion that could confirm that the vLamax blood is reached as there is for VO2 max. Also, what we measure is the result of lactate formation minus lactate clearance. So we can correct about this issue as in every lactate test. Additionally, always some ATP is synthesized by oxidative phosphorylation, and that has to be taken into account. And lastly, the alactic time creates a bit of confusion. Henning and Jamie already discussed about that, TLAC is error prone. So how can we heal these issues? We believe that with the introduction of vLapeak, we can do that. And in the vLapeak equation, we just have the maximum post-exercise lactate concentration minus the pre-exercise lactate concentration divided only with exercise time. So the definition would be that vLapeak is the peak rate of blood lactate accumulation in a 10 to 15 seconds all-out exercise test with no corrections for alactic time or aerobic contribution. We believe that this simplification will eventually allow us to be more honest and more straightforward to our research and get a good idea of the glycolytic power of our athletes without having to confirm that this is the maximum glycolytic rate that these athletes achieve. One who could say that only the difference of lactate post minus pre-exercise would allow us to have an idea, but that would prevent to compare tests that use fixed distance, like in running or swimming, and the duration slightly differs between one test to another. Moreover, I personally believe that a concept of a rate provides a better understanding of a process than simple fixed values post-exercise. So we tried and calculated the vLapeak range of values that was presented in the existing literature, mainly where these studies provided lactate concentrations pre and post-exercise and obviously the exercise time. So what we found is that we can expect 28% lower values than vLamax blood because we do not take into account the lactic time, so the denominator is larger, and the actual raise is 0.2 to 0.8 millimole per liter per second. Keep in mind that vLapeak values can inform us for all the same things as vLamax blood, but the simplification of the calculation and the clearer communication about this marker, we can push the things forward and go ahead and over the criticism that vLamax blood now accepts. So I believe that's really practical to apply vLamax peak measurement. Its usefulness is now told today. It's an assessment of glycolytic power. You can characterize athlete specializations. You can get an indication of performance, especially sprint performance, and then you can implement this data in metabolic modeling. The testing is easy, it's only short duration, it's discipline specific, the athlete doesn't have to learn a new thing to try to be tested on. Almost all athletes can do a 10 seconds maximal effort, and it's not free of charge, but it's not too expensive compared to other testing. And in my opinion, I think it can be implemented along with other tests in routine monitoring of athletes, and the data can be combined so we can get a better idea of athletes' conditioning, and we can plan these measures according to competitive and training schedule of athletes as we do in other forms of testing. So I promised some examples from swimming, and the first ones from our study are from our lab here in Thessaloniki by Mavrodi et al. We tested highly trained, and some of them were really elite athletes in 25, 35, and 50-meter maximal bouts, starting with the official competitive starts. And what we found was, as in Jamie Langley's research, that with increasing distance, the vLamax was decreasing, but the vLamax blood correlated well with swimming speed. One field of caution is when athletes provided the highest post-exercise peak lactate concentration, and that was about 2 minutes post-exercise. So we suggested that the serial sampling after the test should start from the first minute after exercise. Sengoku et al., on the other hand, used a slightly different test. It was 20 meters maximal sprint from what we say dead end from a floating position to avoid the effect of gliding after the start. And what they found was that the vLamax blood was a good indicator of the 50-meter performance in front crawl. And especially in the first parts of the race, that's something very important, so you can have an idea what influences performance in the first meter of a 50-meter race in swimming. And allow me to also share some of my observations from routine testings that we do here, more so in Olympic and elite level swimmers. I didn't tell you, but I'm an scientific associate of the Greek national swimming team, so I have the chance to test a lot of good swimmers. And what I can say to you is that vLapeak can actually explain underperformance in sprint swimming compared to other testing. Also, vLapeak can distinguish short and the long distance specialists. However, we should take note that exceptions exist. Moreover, we can expect elite sprinters to reach vLapeak values above the upper limit of 0.8 millimoles per liter per second, and some endurance athletes be lower than 0.2, the lower value of the vLapeak range. We have spotted variations in vLapeak throughout the training cycles, and we concluded that most of these differences are due to the training regime of the athletes. And we also found in practice that high pre-exercise values can hamper the estimation of vLapeak and usually underestimated, as research also shows. We should also take note that we can expect differences between different strokes, and we should be really cautious with breaststroke, with its gliding technique that usually provides us with lower vLamax blood values now of vLapeak. So our suggestions, and some are really similar to those that Jamie previously stated, is that athletes should be fresh and well fed in order to achieve maximal exercise intensity in a vLapeak measurement. The preceding warm-ups should be light, so pre-exercise lactate concentration can be low. We should do this test in the athlete's discipline or event specialization. We should start serial lactate testing 1 minute from the end of the exercise, so you can spot the real peak lactate concentration. And we should take care of the test settings so the tests can be similar between each other and we can compare them. We also advise the test duration to be lower than 20 seconds. So a great chance today to see the future, and we should collaborate. It's a great chance, as Henrik says, with this initiative by Michael to agree on terminology, to establish the vLaPeak tests in every discipline, to merge research findings with applied practice. There's a great room for research on the training effects on vLaPeak, and then we can see more the implications of vLaPeak on performance. And if we can use all this data in metabolic modeling, like in Matter's model that can provide us with lots of information, then we can have a really better idea of athletes' training and performance. Thank you very much. Sorry again for the technical issue that I had. I'll be happy to answer to any questions if we have time.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It's really insightful to actually get to see what it's like for people working with elite athletes as well. So we've got a couple of questions coming in the chat. We'll start off with one just because I've got it open. So what training methods do you use in your swimmers then to increase or decrease their vLamax, or estimated as vLaPeak then?
Well, obviously, until now, we're going based on tradition, what's already stated. I mean, when we want to increase vLaPeak, we're trying to do sprint interval training, maximal intensity training, trying to improve what is said to improve anaerobic capacity. On the other hand, when we want to improve endurance performance and we would like to have a lower vLaPeak, then we're trying to do moderate or heavy intensity endurance training. But as I said, we need to do research on that and have more clear data, research data that will be, will be based more on this data, not in tradition and experimental and empirical data. But till now, I'm using these methods.
Yeah, excellent. Something that I've always wondered, and it'd be nice to hear other people's points of views as we go through the day as well, is when you're working with elite athletes then, and with the vLamax being such a new, I say a new thing to measure, what do we think is a meaningful difference in vLamax value then? So do we think a 0.1 difference is meaningful, worthwhile training, or actually do we need to see larger variations?
Well, great question, thank you. I was wondering myself, okay, because when you measure vLaPeak now, you have to say something to the coach, to the athlete, so it increased and decreased. From research, there's no clear clues now to say to answer this question. There's no research on that to compare previous vLaPeak and the nowadays vLaPeaks, and to compare the performance and say, okay, if you increased it of about 0.1, you did well. If you increased it of about 0.2, you did even better. So increased it more. But in terms of practice, we've seen that especially in the lower levels of 0.2, 0.3, if you see an athlete go from 0.2 to 0.3, you can see improvement in performance. And I can share with you very recent data from a really elite swimmer that went well in a major competition, in swimming competition. He had pre-tapering, lower about 0.2 vLaPeak value, and we tested him after competition where he did really well, PBs, and he had a 0.3, I don't know, 0.3, 0.35. So that's an indication, but we have to do more research on that so we can have safer conclusions on these.